Washington does not wake up. It emerges. It rises slowly, like a file pulled from the bottom of a locked drawer. And on mornings like this, when the air is too still and the corridors hold a silence that feels constructed, rehearsed, almost curated, you can feel the shift before anyone says it. A pressure behind the walls, a tension under the lights, a weight inside the architecture itself. At 5:14, on a quiet floor of the Rayburn building, a message appeared where no message should ever appear. A single page, unaddressed, unsigned, unclaimed, stamped only with a red mark, restricted. Series 9. The document contained just one sentence: Fortress room access anomaly detected. The anomaly had no timestamp, no origin signature, no route through any recognized channel. CIA Director William J. Berns opened the morning briefing. He paused for 2 seconds. 2 seconds of stillness in a city that does not allow stillness. And in that pause, Washington tilted. Fortress room, a name spoken softly, yet recognized instantly by anyone who has ever held classified authority above level 9. A room without an official door. A space that appears in no architectural layout. A chamber whispered through briefings that never existed. The notice on the page carried no metadata. Every trace had been surgically removed. Only one artifact remained: the faint outline of a forgotten internal seal. Directive 8/7, Shadow Continuum. A protocol rumored but never confirmed. A procedure designed to activate only when an unauthorized presence entered a space that should never be entered. A presence that should never even know the space exists. Cass Petrell heard about the notice before noon. Petrell does not believe in coincidence. He believes in leverage. And an anomaly inside Fortress Room was more than leverage. It was an opening, a rare crack in a wall that had held firm for 50 years. Berns understood the implication. Fortress Room wasn't just breached. Someone had touched something that should have remained untouched. Someone had crossed a line that was never meant to be approached. And somewhere beneath all of this, buried deeper than the concrete foundations of the Capitol complex, a second truth lingered. Fortress Room was not designed to protect the government. It was designed to protect the government from itself. The origins of Fortress Room stretch back into an era when records dissolved into dust the moment they were created. In 1954, during a late-night subcommittee review, a file went missing from a locked chamber. Not taken, not stolen, not misplaced. Missing, as if it had been removed by an invisible hand. Capitol Police called it a clerical error. The archivist responsible for the chamber called it something else. He called it the first shadow. He was reassigned the next morning. By 1978, rumors had grown teeth. A military officer claimed he stepped through a doorway in the Dirksen basement and found himself inside a dark vault, lit only by a single red lamp. No switch, no ventilation, no explanation. He said the air felt observed. He was told he had imagined it. In 1991, internal budgeting documents revealed an unnamed project consuming silent funds, year after year. A line item without description, moving through departments like a ghost. A hidden cost for a hidden room. By 2026, the silence was no longer silence. It was a warning. By the time Berns summoned the secure briefing, only one conclusion remained plausible. This was a Sentinel breach. Sentinel breach is not a term found in manuals. It is a phrase spoken only behind doors that close automatically. It means this: someone accessed something without authorization, someone altered something without detection, and someone intended to leave no trace behind. Dirk Durbin received the initial report and gave his predictable reaction. Berns can't bury this, he said. He was right, but for the wrong reason. It was never about Berns burying it. It was about Berns understanding what had been unearthed. At 1340, a secondary verification sweep found a single trail, a terminal in the North Tower archives, a terminal that had not been logged into for 3 years, a terminal that had been physically disconnected from the network. And yet, at 4:11, it had activated. Someone had used it. The access ID displayed only 2 characters, W delta. There was no W delta in the federal system. The metadata report on the anomaly contained more silence than information. But silence, in Washington, is a shape, a message, a footprint pressed into the absence, only one fragment held, a packet header showing that the terminal's camera lens had activated for 0.6 seconds, then shut off. The feed carried no image, only a distortion pattern, a pattern identical to those left behind by certain encryption-grade cloaking devices tested, unofficially, within another branch of government. Berns leaned into the report. He traced every line, every omission, every deletion. Erased metadata is different from missing metadata. Missing metadata leaves gaps. Erased metadata leaves wounds. Someone was covering tracks not out of panic, but out of habit. This was not the work of a curious analyst or a rogue contractor. This was someone who belonged inside the system. Someone skilled enough to move without being seen. Someone who understood that entering Fortress Room required more than clearance. It required intent. And the intent here was not passive. This was someone sending Berns a message, not a threat, not a warning, a signal. At 14:23, Berns received a message through a sealed channel known only to senior oversight directors. The channel carried a single classification tier, CER 9. Confidential Emergency Review. The sender was Alicia Warren. Warren did not exaggerate. She did not speculate. She did not call meetings unless the building itself seemed to lean. Her message was 10 words. Director Berns, the Fortress anomaly has leaked to Congress. Leaks in Washington move quickly. This one moved instantly. By the time Berns rose from his desk, a secure committee room had already been prepared. Chairs placed with precision. Notepads aligned. Microphones extended. Lights lowered. A space built not for answers, but for extraction. Berns walked toward the committee hallway. The air thickened. The silence felt like a held breath. Behind that door, Petrell, Durbin, Warren, Bondi, and Wilson waited, each with their own agenda, each with their own interpretation of what Fortress Room's existence meant, and each wanting one thing, Berns' explanation. But the problem was not what Berns would say, the problem was what he couldn't. Because the truth was still incomplete, scattered, fractured, unreachable. The breakthrough came not from the room, not from Congress, not from pressure, but from a forgotten archive in a secondary directory inside the anomalous terminal, a hidden folder, locked behind a decoy directory. Within it, a single file, sequence 12, no date, no origin, no checksum. Its content, one sentence. Access without knowledge is still access. Berns read the line. His jaw didn't move, but his breath did. Minutes later, Dan Bonaro approached with a supplemental notice. He handed it over carefully, as if holding a fracture in the structure of the government itself. The notice stated, Sequence 12 was accessed 9 days ago. Access credentials, Director William J. Berns. Berns shook his head. I wasn't on site that day, he said, which meant someone had used his identity, his clearance, his digital signature. Someone had entered the one room only he could enter, pretending to be him. The question was no longer who entered Fortress Room. The question was who entered as Director Berns. When the final inspection team opened Fortress Room that evening, they found nothing unexpected, nothing disturbed, nothing broken, except one thing, a detail so small it almost disappeared into the shadows. A missing object, an object that does not exist in any catalog. A symbolic artifact seen only during one moment in a director's life, the transfer of command, director's seal. A ceremonial imprint passed from predecessor to successor, not stored, not displayed, not archived. kept deep inside Fortress Room as the final affirmation of identity, and now it was gone. When Berns stepped into the committee chamber, the room hardened. Petrel leaned forward. Durbin prepared questions like weapons. Warren monitored every shift in Berns' expression. Bondi scanned the room for inconsistencies. Wilson evaluated the political cost of the unfolding crisis. The first question landed. Director Berns, who entered Fortress Room? Berns did not answer, because he finally understood the truth. Someone wasn't trying to breach the room. Someone wasn't trying to steal access. Someone wasn't trying to expose him. Someone was trying to be him. Fortress Room had not been infiltrated. Identity had. And the director's seal was the one object that proved authenticity. The one proof that Berns was Berns. Now it was missing. Berns looked at the panel, then down at his empty hands, and for the first time since the notice appeared, Berns whispered a single sentence to himself. This wasn't an intrusion, this was a replacement. Outside, the Washington night held its breath, cold, silent, watching, because the story wasn't ending. It was only adjusting, reconfiguring, shifting into its next shape, and somewhere in the city, someone held the director's seal, someone who shouldn't. All content is entirely fictional.